Hi, I'm Simon. I'm a counsellor based in Oxford, UK, and this is Understanding Grief from Being Locked in the Toilet. The first part of this video is a skit about coming to terms with living in the loo, and in the second part, I'll talk a bit more around theories of bereavement. Imagine you come over to my house to visit. Perfectly normal occasion, and you have a really nice time. We have a nice chat about all sorts of things. We play a board game, and grab a bite to eat. Embarrassingly, the need for a number 2 hits you, and unfazed, I tell you where the toilet is. You've not been to this room before and are a bit uncomfortable with it, but needs must, and eventually you find the toilet. Unaware of what's about to happen, you lock the door behind you and then sit on the loo and spend 5 minutes doing your business. And as you're straining away, you hear a strange noise at the door. You don't know what it is, but it's a bit like a drill. Your trousers around your ankles, you're still finishing your business, you're powerless to be able to investigate. So for now you decide you'll just shout out, say something.
Simon, is that you? I can hear noise outside.
The drilling eventually stops, but I don't reply. You try to put your unease of the drill to the back of your mind. Maybe you imagined it. It doesn't really make sense, and wipe and wash your hands and finish up your business. But the whole way through, your reptilian brain knows something's off. There's a threat that you can detect under the surface, nagging away from you. You need to check. So, meaning to have a word with me about this drilling noise, you unlock the door and try and open the handle. Your fingers are still wet, but something's off. The door feels like it's locked. Futilely, you knock and pull at the door, trying to pull it open with pure strength. You doubt yourself. Maybe you didn't twist the handle right, but it doesn't seem to be working. The door is somehow screwed shut. Practical joke, you think. Uncharacteristic of me, and you shout for help.
Si, I'm stuck in the loo.
Again, no answer or response. Keep trying to call me with more aggression and determination as the minutes pass, and then think, I'll phone him. Funny, you don't remember turning your phone off. You try to phone my number, but it doesn't seem to work, not registered on network. There's something off. You try Wi-Fi and WhatsApp me, but that doesn't seem to be working either. The phone's useless. Maybe you could open the window and call for help or escape, but that too seems somehow locked. You see someone walking by and try and shout out to them.
Help! Help! Let me out!
But they or any of the other passers-by seem to stop or even notice you there in the bathroom screaming for help. A good half hour's gone by. You're exhausted and sit down to take stock. Picking up your phone, you figure that you will distract yourself and play a game. And there are moments that it works. You're distracted and almost forget in playing backgammon that you're stuck in the toilet. Then there are other moments where the realization of your predicament hits you and you miss home. You long to be able to leave. There are times where, again, it doesn't feel real, as though the door will open, it'll all be a practical joke. Glimmers of powerlessness come over you, alongside other strong feelings. You're not ready to be in here. You need to get out. But you're too polite and socialised to try and do anything too drastic. After all, you're a guest. You can't smash a window. And so as the hours go on without rescue and it begins to get dark outside, it becomes evident that you're going to have to sleep in here. I say sleep, but you're restless, thinking of little else but 1, your situation, and 2, the discomfort of trying to get a good night's sleep in the bath. Morning does come, and the sleep deprivation adds to the weight of your feelings, alongside the realisation that the world around you is still moving, and what will work say now you're so late? You need to get out, but scanning the room you find a plate of food and water. Who put this here? How did that happen? You're hungry, you need to eat, but you can't stop trying to make meaning out of this. Obsessional almost. What's happening? Why is this happening? Surely you would have heard the door open with that rough night's sleep you had. Yet no meaning comes, or answers to why or how you're in the toilet. Later in the day, social convention goes, and you put all of your effort and anger into breaking free. Trying to smash a window, cause a mess, break down the door, but acting on anger's worthless. You're still stuck. And worse still, you're damaged by it. hand bleeding, cold breeze. It doesn't make sense. You've tried everything to escape. Nothing seems to be working. And so there's a shimmer of acceptance as you pick up a book in the room and read, not to distract yourself, but more out of boredom, to pass the time. You realise though that it's not acceptance. It's hopelessness at being trapped. And you feel the heavy weight of depression. As days go by, food keeps coming, no meaning is given. You begin to oscillate between trying to escape but also accepting your situation, making the most of it, treating yourself to a nice bath or a shave. And in stopping fighting escaping, you begin to accept it and even to take interest in the books you find or adapting the climate of the place to better meet your needs, like using the shower curtain as a duvet. You're no longer fighting to escape the toilet. And in stopping fighting, you realise that you're ready to leave, that it was you keeping yourself here the whole time. You mourn leaving, just as you mourned when you realised you were trapped in the toilet. But this room will always be part of your house, a room that you can return to with doors unlocked. Thank you for listening so far. There are lots of different theories of bereavement. And if you're looking for something that goes into a little bit more depth on those theories, then please do check out my longer video. It's about an hour or so, and it really goes into a lot of the different theories and what they mean. Originally, I was teaching this as a group, and I was trying to help some of the lads in this group to understand what bereavement might feel like, what grief might feel like. And I thought a real tangible way of beginning to understand that was to talk about coming to terms with being locked in a toilet. It was comical, it was engaging. And we talked about how we might respond for the first couple of seconds, where we maybe don't believe it, the first minute or two, the first half hour where we're trying to escape and do things. Some of them were much more dramatic and smashing the door down at 10 minutes. The first hour, what it might be like after a day, a week, a year, 5 years, what it might be like coming to terms with a massive change like being trapped in the toilet. And I want to give a disclaimer that there is no right way to grieve a loss or a change. There's no single theory of bereavement that is correct. The stage-based ones that suggest you go through a particular order of things, Kubler-Ross being the classic. Again, people tend to oscillate between different stages. They don't stay in one place, just as with me being trapped in the toilet, I oscillated between periods of distraction and then periods of grief work. But let's break this video down into 14 distinct stages, and then I'll very quickly cover some of the theories. The first stage is unexpectedness. The loss hasn't happened, or at least you haven't come to terms with it. In terms of bereavement, it would be the pre-bereavement. Our life is occupied by other things. It's the rocking up at the house, playing a board game, having a meal, having a nice chat, the opposite of being locked in the toilet. The second stage is shock, namely mid-poo, and then you can hear the screws going in the door. You're shocked by it. You can't really engage with it or come to terms with it because you're in the midst of your business. It hasn't hit home yet that you are locked in the toilet. And in the same way, many of the stages suggest things like numbness or shock or not believing. The third stage is distraction. In the midst of the poo, finishing up your business, wiping, washing your hands, and people who have a loss, particularly a bereavement, are often incredibly distracted early on. There's lots of practicalities to sort out, like the funeral, notifying people, taking on roles that the person had, practical things like changing utility bills. So there's lots of practical distractions, the hand washing, the bum wiping in the toilet. There are practical things that can happen before we can even go to the door to check that we are actually trapped. The fourth stage was the pulling at the door and then realizing that you're trapped. It's a attempt to deny it, an immediate resistance to the acceptance that somebody has died, that a loss has happened. It's encountering it and having space to quite painfully and suddenly encounter the fact that we are trapped in the toilet. Fifth stage I put in there was bargaining, namely shouting out to people outside, trying to phone someone or connect to the Wi-Fi, screaming for somebody in the house. It's trying to be noticed and to resist the reality of the loss, the death, whatever it is that we are coping with in terms of grief. Bargaining is an attempt to stop it, to change it happening. For the sixth scene, I put in distraction, so going on the phone and playing backgammon. And I think distraction from intensity is necessary, otherwise we will burn ourselves out. And I could have put that same scene in between an awful lot of the other stages as a dual process between grief work and avoidance of grief work. But avoidance is an active thing rather than us not doing it. Distracting ourselves by playing a game on the phone is moving away from the intensity of the reality of being locked in the toilet. The seventh scene was going to sleep, and that was a sense of not acceptance by choice, but acceptance by force. Namely, it's getting dark, you're starting to feel tired, your physiological needs like thirst or hunger might be coming over you. In the same way, it's getting dark, so I went to sleep in the bath. You're not choosing it, you're adapting to the reality of the grief, which means practically doing things even if we haven't accepted it. In going to sleep, the eighth scene was also about giving up resisting. The same with eating the meal or eating the water that's left there rather than assuming that it's poison and pushing against it. It's again an oscillation, not quite accepting, but channeling our energy elsewhere. It's a sense of coming to terms with it, mostly out of exhaustion rather than purely resistance. The ninth scene was about missing life outside of a toilet. It was realizing all those responsibilities that are gone or shifted, work, relationships with people outside of that room. It's grief work, it's missing what isn't there. It's in terms of bereavement, it's around missing the person, less fighting against it and more just wondering how those things will be without them. The 10th scene was around meaning making, which I would have preferred to put more effort into actually. Meaning making, spiritualism, trying to come to terms with magical things like the window not breaking, because I'm not going to break my own window in making a video, or the food magically appearing. And there can be a sense of bargaining with that as well, trying to connect spiritually with the person who's died, praying, making amends. There's a real thing about trying to make sense of what has happened, trying to have a purpose out of it. And people will get different answers from their own beliefs, their faiths, things like they're smiling down upon me, or I'm connected to them, or it's their time to go. It's that kind of oscillating between trying to make meaning of the loss and the reality of actually they're gone and I don't want to be stuck in the toilet. The 11th scene, and my favourite to film, was actively acting on anger, letting go of social convention and just trying to break the hell out of the bathroom window. And I was thinking about how people who are trapped in cycles of grief may well do things that are very active in feelings. And anger can be a wonderful emotion because it drives us forward. It doesn't help us to give up. It gives us that kind of last ditch effort to escape. But I also wanted to emphasize that sometimes acting on our anger can also harm us. So in this case, if we smash the window, we might bloody our hand. It might mean that the room's colder because air is getting through. In anger, we might fall into addiction. We may try and harm ourselves. We may make reckless decisions, and all of that can be motivated out of a desperation to try and stop the grief and the situation we found ourselves in, locked in the toilet. The 12th scene, reading the book, was meant to be around hopelessness. It can feel a little bit like acceptance. At least it's accepting that there's nothing that we can do to change a situation, but that hopeless scene is where more stronger feelings of depression, sadness, numbness, lowness, the real stuck feelings start to arise. And those feelings are very natural and adaptive to being stuck in the toilet. We are literally trapped, and it's okay to feel trapped, to feel depressed. It's part of coming to terms of it. Those feelings that are less active and aren't driving us, but it's adaptive because that's the situation. You're stuck in the loop. Penultimate stage was acceptance. So rather than putting energy into try and fighting it or feeling utterly beaten, downtrodden, and depressed by the result of being locked in the toilet, it's where I started to do things like use the bath, shave, read all of the books, reorganize things, read all of the labels to, I don't know, turn the toilet paper tubes into a pillow. It's being able to have accepted what has happened and adjusting life accordingly without trying to fight it, without trying to change it, almost trying to make the most of it. And then the final scene that choked me up a little bit making it was about reintegration. It's about realizing that we are in the toilet, but we can let ourselves out of it. Realizing that our grief is one of the rooms in the house, and that room is never going to change. It's never going to get less intense. We will always need to visit it. That's one thing about the toilet. We do have to visit the loo a few times a day. We always have to visit it, but no longer feeling as though we are trapped in it. And it might be that rather than traumatic memories of the death, traumatic memories of being locked in the bog, instead there are happy memories around connecting to that loo, looking back and mourning having to go and leave. And then that's kind of a stage of grief work as well, reintegrating back into life and having other rooms in the house, but also being able to revisit our grief. It's a myth, actually, that we ever get over a loss. How can we ever get over the loss of our attachment figures and the people who are important to us? They will always be important to us, but we won't be choked up as much. We won't be resistant or have the intensity of feelings to what we may have had to begin with when we were first locked in the toilet. In the corner of the screen, I have stuck up some theories of bereavement. These are the stage-based models. And if you go onto my website and you look at the article on theories of bereavement, that's www.simonslistening.co.uk. Look at my blog and you'll find the full article. You can download this as a handout. It can be a helpful way of just looking through theories of grief, or watch the hour-long video that goes into a lot of detail on them. So you'll notice that a lot of these stage-based models reflect some of the scenes in coming to terms of being locked in the toilet. And what I like about doing this video is it takes the blame out of grief. A lot of people who are grieving can feel as though there's something really wrong with them, but grief isn't a mental health issue. Grief is a process that we go to coming to terms of losing our attachment figure. It's normal to have these intense pangs, that urge to escape, mystical thinking, moving against social conventions, leaving the rest of a household to be trapped. All of that is a recognised process. And there are other theories of bereavement that aren't in that little snippet you can see in the corner. So one I very much like is around connecting with the person who has gone, and I've not covered that so much because it's different. It'd be like spending time to be able to connect with the sofa when you're in the toilet. It's hard to do in this analogy, but connecting with a loved one, continuing bonds, I very much enjoy working with to help people to come to terms with grief. Tonkin's model is another one that I've not really touched on, but that's a sense of never getting over our grief. We always connect to somebody. It's just that life grows, but the grief stays the same. And I guess I have touched on that actually by saying that the toilet is always there and we can always go back to connect to it. And the other model that's not covered in those four is the dual processing model, which is very much about oscillating between grief work, the loss orientation, and restoration, the other part. So you could model that by saying that I locked myself in the toilets, and that preparing food, going to work, having marriage, all those things that happen outside of a toilet are part of me. And then I also oscillate to being locked in the loo. And there can be an oscillation, almost like waves of grief, of being in the loss and also being in the restoration, of being locked in the loo and not being locked in the loo. And they can feel quite antagonistic and fighting against one another. I really hope this video has been of use to you. I hope that you don't ever get locked in the toilet. And if you ever come over to my house, I'm imagining that you won't ask to use the loo. The room that I rent as a counsellor does have many toilets downstairs, and eventually we will maybe have a room in the house and be able to offer it, but you'll be able to get out of the toilet if you see me. If you have watched this and you are thinking about counselling for grief, then I would love to be with you at whatever stage you are at in your journey of being locked in the toilet, of coming to terms with a loss, with anger, with depression, with not believing it to be true. Wherever you're at, I would love to journey with you. And if you'd like to leave a comment, I'm a fairly small channel and I tend to read and respond to each of them. I would be fascinated how you would act if you were locked in the toilet after a minute, 5 minutes, etc. And then finally, feel free to check out some of the other videos on my channel on various topics like addiction, bereavement, understanding yourself with a hot cross bun. Thank you for listening, and I wish you well. Enjoy the rest of your day.